Right, good evening everyone. Thanks for coming along. Gerard and I were supposed to talk about the briefings beforehand, but I heard a funny one the other day, which goes along the lines of if there's a fire, run out the front, there's a space to meet. If there's a flood, swim. And if there's anything else, scream, and we'll try and work out what's going on. We've got bathrooms out near the entrance if you need those. And for those who maybe feel a little bit out of place tonight, basically I confess this event kind of took me by surprise as well. I sort of started chatting to a few friends about having a casual wine and platter evening to catch up since we hadn't seen each other for a long time. And then I think I was emailing Claire at the same time, and we were talking about some other programs, and somehow it rolled into this wider alumni catch-up. But as the days have come closer, it's sort of come to be something I look forward to, and I think it is something I'd like to do more of, especially giving back to the university. So whether you liked uni or not, it's where we all came together. And for those that know me, I'm very optimistic to my own demise often. I believe we've got a chance to create the future. This wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for all of you coming along tonight, as well as Gerard for funding and picking up the tab for this evening, Claire for kind of organise the impossible, and also for Emma and Courtney, who basically found out last week about this evening and have jumped in the deep end and have kind of wrangled a bit of a speech together. The title of tonight is Meeting of the Minds, and that kind of symbolises all of you smart people in the audience. The angle we're trying to bring tonight is a little bit of a future food focus. It's a large portion of New Zealand's industry, and for me it kicked off about 14 years ago when I became interested in solving my first problem, which was my demand for peanut butter and jam sandwiches, which seemed to surpass my family's ability to order them, and it caused quite a bit of frustration when I was stuck with Marmite sandwiches for lunch, and it's come a long way since then. But over the time, I've kind of come across three major findings. Healthy food has a significant impact on our quality of life. Changing to a plant-based diet is the most impactful thing you can do to reduce the climate crisis. And as of late, people are starting to feel the pinch in the pocket, and it's everyone's second largest household expense during the week, being food and grocery usually, and it's definitely rising a lot faster than wages are. So speaking to the first point around health, I started out with the Pure Food Co, making pureed food for those with swallowing difficulties, typically the elderly. Before pureed food and the Pure Food Co, one of our customers had lived on scrambled eggs for over a decade. There are a lot of risk factors for people that suffer from dysphagia, which is the technical term for swallowing difficulty. One of these is the water separation, which typically happens when you essentially put food in a food processor. And for those at risk, it significantly impacts them, and a lot end up actually with pneumonia, because when they are trying to eat meals, they inhale a bit of that water into their lungs. The main one we were trying to solve was malnutrition. So how are people supposed to fight off infections and fix broken bones without the proper fuel? And it was really great every day running operations and seeing packets of food go off the line, and wholeheartedly knowing that we were adding years to people's lives, enjoyment to meal times, and also reducing hospital wait times because people could recover faster. My time at Pure Food Co set me up well to essentially be the co-founder and on the founding team of Off-Piste Provisions. It's a plant-based meat snack company focusing on a small niche in the world and a strategy which New Zealand can do well, which is dominating small global niches with an ambient high-value product that we can ship all around the world. Our base product is 45% protein. It's from pea and fava bean to avoid any monocropping, and it's free from gluten and soy. And I think some of you now, getting used to the fact I typically bring a lot of jerky or biltong on, camping trips. And I think, I'm becoming to be known as the jerky guy. So the journey of starting a new company in a pandemic was very rough, especially since we were one of the first companies in the world to develop first cut of real meat. Speaking honestly, it was a really tough ride, and I've never smacked so hard into rock bottom as last year when you're probably burnt out for the third time in a row. You've got a mountain of responsibilities, things going wrong, and everyone coming to you for solutions. And one of the moments relevant to this audience, and I can say this, Barney Dawson over here, his family adopted me when my parents buggered off overseas, and Vlad, a good mate of mine from university, and I was in between weekend work, and Barney coaxed me out of the office, and we were kicking a rugby ball around, and basically his final words were, "Hey, next time can you bring a smile?" And it was literally how shit I was feeling at that time of my life. He wasn't lying, Another one of my friends caught up and he said, "Damn, you look like ass, like what's going on, And my parents also begged me to quit. They were like, "Alex, this is literally, really compromising, your quality of life." And I kind of sympathized with J.K. Rowling, who had a really good quote that basically rock bottom is a great place to build strong foundations. It's definitely not fun, so open invite out there. So if you ever get to a point where it's really tough, I've been there. It's pretty hard to actually get advice that helps you out because every situation is different, especially if you're entrepreneurial and basically a lot of people don't necessarily understand what's at stake and why you're driven to work so hard. That aside, I can say I'm much better headspace this year, and post launch and being 6 months into market, we were represented by a New Zealand trade delegation over to Japan and Singapore, which are our 4th and 5th largest trading partners, alongside the likes of Fonterra, and hoping for the future of protein production here in New Zealand. And that was a bit of a long ramble, but I wholeheartedly believe that changing to a plant-based diet is the single most impactful thing anyone can do to reduce the impact of climate change. And we're starting to see some really great support in this area. And the whole reason for Off-Piste is to give people better options than traditional meat products. And I think a few other people can attest that it tastes, chews, looks, it's nutritionally superior to conventional meat products. And it's a very noisy space, but one analogy that came through from the Economist.com the other day magazine was an analogy that if you compare solar power to coal-powered plants in terms of electricity generation, solar power, put it this way, coal is about 28 times worse than solar power in terms of a full life cycle analysis for the impact on the planet. And if you compare the same between beef and tofu, which is one of those first products out there that I don't eat a lot of, to be honest, the difference there is 34 times. So beef is 34 times worse for the planet than tofu. And we're talking about an analogy which I I think most people here agree that coal-powered power generation is pretty bad for the planet, and solar is this amazing thing. But the trade-off between beef and plant-based solutions have an even bigger impact. And not everyone's hippy dippies and care about the planet too much. But one thing I started to mention is we're all starting to feel the pinch in our grocery shop. A lot of our food systems are broken, and a technology that is really starting to basically bring this forward is the likes of precision fermentation. And over the next 5 to 10 years, people are optimistic around reductions 5 to 10 times in the cost of protein, not to mention the efficiency gains. So with that in mention, I'll pass over to Emily, who is here from Daisy Labs. Oh, yep.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I am one of the co-founders and a scientist at Daisy Lab. And we are a precision fermentation company that is rethinking how we produce food to be more sustainable. So the New Zealand dairy industry is by far our biggest export, but it is also by far our biggest polluter. So the pollution from dairy far exceeds pollution from all of our transport methods combined. Not only that, every year about 2 million baby calves are taken from their mothers and slaughtered so that we can then take the milk and sell it overseas, which is fairly horrific. Because of these two things, there's a big change in consumer sentiment at the moment. So people are demanding food that is not only ethically sourced, but also environmentally sustainable. So if we could replace all these cows, 80 cows, with a fermentation the possibilities for sustainable protein production are huge in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, reducing land usage, reducing water consumption. So we aim to produce dairy without the cow. We use precision fermentation to create dairy identical proteins. In our case, we're focusing on casein, which is the most abundant protein in bovine milk. It makes up about 80% of the proteins in cow's milk. So precision fermentation is basically just a take on traditional fermentation that we've been doing for thousands of years to get things like beer and wine and bread. But we take those microorganisms that do the fermenting and we give them an extra set of instructions. Casein is, like I said, it's the most abundant protein in bovine milk. It's also one of the highest valued commodities, so it trades at about $9,000 US a tonne. It is in pretty much all dairy foods. Not only that, it's also in paint, paper, cosmetics, and it is the magic molecule that makes cheese stretch and melt and feel like cheese. So if you've come across vegan cheese, it doesn't really have the same texture, also doesn't really stretch or melt. So that's why casein is kind of the holy grail for us in terms of alternative proteins. So like I said, we take these microbes, we basically give them an extra set of instructions. We then do precision fermentation, and these microbes produce our casein proteins. We then filter, and it's kind of from that point similar to traditional dairy downstream processing, so things like spray drying and reformulation into our final dairy products. A little bit of a dive into the actual science. So we take the DNA sequence, and you don't have to get this from the cow, you literally order it online. And then using primers, short DNA sequences, you do PCR, which stands for everyone's very familiar with PCR because of COVID testing. You insert that into a plasmid, and then you, using Gibson assembly, your DNA joins into the plasmid, and you can transform it into, often we use an initial host. We select the hosts that have that plasmid and therefore our casein DNA sequence, transform it into our final host, and then we can express our protein. So using that technology, we can get casein without having to go to the cows. We can reduce the environmental and ethical impacts of dairy farming and produce dairy without the cow.
Cool. All right. Bit disappointed I didn't get an applause, but we can say. All right. So another fermentation technique that we're probably all a lot more familiar with is wine. And when we're talking about cheese, we also want to make sure that we've got some wine around. Maybe not with your cheese toasty, but evenings like this. And we've got Courtney here, who I studied with here at University of Auckland. And she now is, titled her as a wine guru from Obsidian Vineyard. If you've ever got any questions about wine, Courtney's here to tell more.
Right, hello everybody. So Alex basically called me up last week and was like, Courtney, you've got to speak at this event. And I had no idea what it was about, what he wanted it to focus on. All of a sudden it's about innovation. So I will work that into this whole speech. But as he said, I studied engineering, so I did ChemEd class of 2014. Worked as a chemical engineer for a few years and then decided that materials wasn't quite my niche, and that I wanted to get into wine production. So one great thing that connects engineering and wine is that we drink a lot of beer. And it seems like you guys are drinking, there's a few wine glasses around, but we love to drink beer as well. After I'd worked as an engineer, I decided to do wine, and the University of Auckland actually has a postgraduate and now a master's program in wine science, which I actually didn't really know about while I was an undergrad here. And it actually takes you over to Waiheke Island. There's a campus over there, and it's a one-year course, crash course on everything vineyard and wine. So I went over there and studied and have managed to do a few vintages overseas in France, Oregon, and I'm now based on Waiheke. So I actually worked at Goldie Estate first, which is the wine that we've got here tonight, and since then have moved on to Obsidian, which is also on Waiheke. So unfortunately you guys aren't drinking wine, but I did think I could go through a bit of how to taste wine and debunk some myths about wine and talk about innovation as well.
Should we all get some wine?
Yeah, if you guys want to grab some wine.
You get to top up on some food as well.
Get the red. Get the red.
Juliet, she's got the name again.
Yeah, I've got it.
What? Do you have communal washing or?
No, you just get the
Very special. Awesome talk.
All right.
Good.
This morning I was like, all right, find a slide deck that I already have, just change it around a wee bit and run through a couple of things.
I'm not sure if that was
What?
Go for grab a wine.
The guys were like,
I know,
what
I think
do I do now?
I'm not good wine.
You done a wine already?
Gara's going to grab me one, thank you.
I have no idea, but now they just use them.
Thanks. Okay.
There's not that much other talking, so may as well.
Are you going to?
I just finished my beer anyway.
Okay. I was just telling him that I didn't want it all, so he's like, let's take it at me. Yeah, he's like, this is looking like a cheap knife.
And I told him to get red as well.
No, I didn't. I did my undergrad at Massey and I'm doing my master's at Massey at the moment. So no, I've never. Actually, I did one paper at Auckland in year 13.
Oh, did you? I did one of those too.
Yeah, like you go after school, your school uniform,
Yeah,
total
exactly.
nerd.
And I was like, this is weird. I'm
Yeah.
sitting in class. I did it at a psychology paper.
Oh, I did classics.
Yeah, they were completely random ones that you could do it.
Totally, yeah. But other than that, no affiliation with Auckland Uni. Just Alex reached out with regards to what we're doing at Daisy Lab, and then totally, and he just messaged the other day and was like, "Hey, you want to come to this evening?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was like, "And also want to speak?" I was like, "Oh, really?" Yeah. All right, spread the word. Yeah, I know. Sorry, should we start eating? It's very
That was a good response, right? You
I know. Wasn't quite the intention. Well done. It's good advertising, right?
Yeah.
Good. Cheers to that. Cheers, Emma.
Cheers.
That's good.
It is good.
I like that.
All right, so everyone's sort of got a wine in their hand. I just want to say I did help make this wine. Yeah. So I was at Goldie I started the course in 2017, 18, and then did summer of 19 there. And this is a vintage 19. So the first thing that you're doing at a tasting, right? Or you're sitting down at a restaurant and a waiter comes over, you take a wine order, and then they come back with a bottle and they say, "Oh, was this the wine that you wanted, right?" And you say, "Yes, that's the one that I wanted." Then they open it and then pour a little sip for you to try. What do you do in that moment, right? You're like, do I just say I like it or not? So originally this was all about wines that had corks in them. So corks are natural products, but they do get cleaned. So there are different chemicals that you can use to clean them. There's bromine or chlorine, basically. And the chlorine actually reacts with a cork and produces a compound called trichloroanisole, which is known as TCA, and cork taint. So when they're pouring the wine for you, they're asking basically, do you detect cork taint, which actually smells like wet cardboard or a wet dog. Nowadays, or at least in New Zealand, we've actually moved to screw caps. And there's actually no possibility of there being cork taint in the wines. But this is kind of a hangover from that, so that's why they're actually doing that for you. So once you've got your wine in your glass, what we're doing is the first thing actually is that you're looking at the colour. So you're looking at your wine, you're looking at the hue of it. Is it slightly blue-red or is it purple-red? With white wines, you're looking at, is it more yellow or is it more green? And then you're looking at, or if your glass is dusty. The age of the wine you can tell by the colour around the edge of it. So wine as it ages tends to turn orange, and you can see around the rim that it goes orange. This one's quite young, this is a 2019, so it should still maintain its kind of like purpley red colour. Another thing that you're looking for is clarity. So because I told you all to get red ones, you can't tell, but you're looking at the clarity of the wine. Is it clear? Is it cloudy? So one process that we do in winemaking is that we add fining agents. So on the back of the label, you've got fined with casein, or fined with bentonite, or fined with egg products, or fined with that sort of thing. So that is one thing that wines are starting to look at in terms of technology and innovation. So we are starting to use pea proteins instead to help with fining. And I'd actually be really interested to know if we can use dairy-free casein for fining wines. So that's one other thing that we are looking at in the wine industry. So then we get into smelling our wines. So we are swirling our wines, and this is introducing oxygen into the glass. It's making some of the compounds volatilize, and that's how we can smell them. So with this wine, does anyone want to shout out anything that they can smell? Fruits or what's that? Bit of cherry. Yeah, so we've got cherries, plums. So this is a Cabernet Merlot. I think it's probably more Merlot dominant, so it's got a larger proportion of Merlot grapes than Cabernet grapes. So that's a very typical aromas to get in Merlot Cabernet. What else could I say? Yeah, then we can drink the wine. Earthy, yeah, yep. Earthy. Also, you can often smell what type of oak people are using. So a lot of the red wines are aged in oak barrels, and so you can detect different types of barrel characteristics. It can be a charry, it can be vanilla. So American oak's very vanilla-y. Yeah. Then if we're drinking the wine, you can go ahead and drink some wine. And what you're often doing, you'll see winemakers, and they like swirl the wine around in their mouth, and they're actually coating their mouth with the wine. And so this is making the proteins inside the wine react with the saliva in your mouth. And so these things are all tannins and polyphenols, proteins, and yeah, they can come from either the fruit, they can come from the oak, or from the seeds or stems from the grapes. These tannins develop over time, so older wines will have softer tannins than younger wines. And then, yeah, you just enjoy it, basically. What else was I gonna say? Yeah. So there is a lot of other innovations in wine as well. So we're looking a lot at low alcohol wines. So that's a really big thing that people are trying to do now, lower or no alcohol wines. This kind of changes the entire matrix of a wine. So a wine is about 14% alcohol, and taking that alcohol out actually changes the whole matrix of the components in that. So it's a matter of trying to figure out how to maintain those matrices without that alcohol in it. We're also looking at genetically modifying yeast as well to develop, so that during fermentation they're producing certain aromas, and microbial terroir as well. So microbes in the vineyard actually are used inside the winery to complete some of the fermentation processes. And so we're looking at how those microbes are actually traveling from one wine region to another wine region, and how that's changing the makeup of these wines, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So we're kind of increasing diversity, but also reducing one area's specific like blueprint or their key identifiers. So yeah, there's lots of interesting things coming about, and that's all with the University of Auckland, and there's also another big research facility down in Marlborough that's doing a lot of those. So yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of the night. Thanks, Alex, for dragging me into this.
All right, thanks both Emily and Courtney, and yeah, hopefully you guys learned something new, or you saw what often I find we get into these sort of bubbles where you're kind of hanging out with your mates at work or your own friends, and you're kind of in these similar clusters. So quite often you get a little bit closed, and it's good to hear some different perspectives. And yeah, a few of the people in the room here today, we were probably around the age of 30. That means we've got around 60,000 hours, I believe, if I've done my maths right, of working hours left. And Sorry to put it down on the evening. But we honestly get to choose how we spend them. And what I'm passionate about is literally how we can transform the world, transform New Zealand, or even basically make an improvement in our local communities. And one of the key things which I've learned over the years is mentorship. Now this works both ways, between mentees and mentors. And speaking to myself, I've got 3 really rock solid mentors. They're all about 5 to 10 years older than me, and they can kind of help guide my journey. They've come across things that I'm probably going to bang into in 2 years' time and reduce the damage. And I'm also mentoring 3 younger guys, one of which has just graduated University of Auckland, chemical engineer. Doesn't know what the hell he's doing with his life, and he's currently over in Ireland playing cricket, and I'm helping him bring a vegan cricket ball to market. And yeah, every cricket ball is made from cowhide, so it's an interesting space. And then a couple other guys younger than that. So yeah, it's just a super way to accelerate your growth in any area. You get to choose the mentor, and then you can also help out others. And I often find that part of the journey is really rewarding, and it also brings back fond memories of yourself, or helps you kind of reconcile the past and how things happen. And that's basically one of the key messages I'd like people to take away tonight, seeing as we're back in kind of the engineering faculty, the university I should say, which we've all kind of has been part of our journey and kind of has shaped our lives. Before I forget, this is kind of the end of the formalities and the talking. We've got more of the Goldie's wines. It looks like we almost wiped them out, Courtney. There's beers there, juice, wine, more platter food. And if you guys are feeling hungry, we've got year bowls. They're a super nutritious snack over the back there. And we've also got some off-piste toppers. It's a new range of our products which hasn't even hit the supermarket yet. But I just thought I'd give you guys a first sneak peek. Might follow up with a survey later on just to get a little bit of feedback, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. And the whole idea is it's a hit of protein, bit of crunch that you can add to salads, to pizzas, or even to your morning, your afternoon, your lunch, or wherever you sit. Baked, Daisy Lab cheesy potatoes in the evening, so really versatile snack. Thank you everyone for coming along. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Cheers. Over to Claire.
I won't use the microphone. I also want to introduce, we've got a few university staff and students here that I'd like to introduce you to. So obviously it's great to have you all back to university, and it would be great if you just potentially just have a moment to talk to a few representatives. So we've had a nice theme here this evening. It's sustainable foods, and we've got some people who are quite keen on that sustainability thing here, just purely for that reason. So if anything has sort of stirred in you from the presentations that you've heard, or in terms of mentoring programs, we've also got Darcel here. So we have Darcel, we have Manoj, we have Philip, we have Y, and we have Cody, and myself, who I'm with the innovation. So if anybody wants to talk, and Gerard, sorry. I'm the Dean of Engineering. So if anybody wants to have a chat to us about any thoughts you might have in terms of connecting the university on innovation, sustainability, or any of those things, we'd love to actually talk to you as well. So we're welcome to doing. So look forward to this program. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Do you want to say anything, Darcel? Cool.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Darcel Kane. I'm the director for the Centre for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So we run this space, at least space, but also the Velocity program that probably many of you are probably involved at the university. Alex was on the committee for a number of years, so it's awesome to hear who he's ended up. And I guess a few things that were coming up for me. One, Alex contacted me probably about 3 months ago about thinking about doing an alternative protein hackathon, so that could be something and we could pick out. We've got Velocity Innovation Challenge program judging going on at the moment. So a lot of you would be at that point of your careers. We would be fantastic judges and mentors for the Velocity program, or great support for some of the startups we've got working out of this space here. So if you do want to get involved with the startup entrepreneurship space, this will be the home for it. We all would have left just before the makerspace opened, but that is a space that's on campus for students and staff to use as prototype models. So that would be why you'd talk to me. And the big thing is Velocity's 20-year celebration next year, so we will be really reinvigorating the alumni community and moving into it.
Awesome. Any questions from this evening? We didn't really open the floor at all, but probably ask Courtney the most questions. She knows the most. Feel free to ask us later on. And yeah, I might tuck into a year bowl. I'm pretty hungry, so yeah.
Can I ask how's for the Daisy Labs? What's the sort of stage like? Have you trialed making cheese yet?
We're very much at the lab stage still. So we're still, I guess, refining our microbial cultures. We've got about 5 streams going at the moment and just seeing what's working best and what's going to give us the best results. So yeah, still fairly early days. Our CEO, who was the one that the cow was looking at the end, she's our optimist, and she would say that we'll have something in a couple of years. Myself and the other co-founder are scientists, so we don't say in a couple of years, we say a bit longer than that. But 2024, we would hope to have a prototype, maybe to go out to consumer testing.
And is that just due to the time required for trial and error and figuring out the right, protein and microorganisms, I guess, and the DNA sequence that's right?
Yeah, a little bit of that. For a long time, it was just me in the lab, and we've hired 2 scientists. We've got Kiara over here. 2 months ago? Yeah, 2 months ago. So we've only recently expanded to get more hands on board, and also biology. It just does not follow a path. But yeah, it was. We started, I guess, just before the last big lockdown as well, which meant that I was locked out of lab space and bits and pieces. So hopefully things will speed up now, but it was a slow start.
What's the raw ingredient that it's actually fermenting?
So that's something that I'm working on at the moment as a part of my master's project. I'm trialing different, essentially household wastes as a substrate. And I've had quite good success with a lot. And by household waste, I mean like your apples in your fridge that are a little bit too soft to eat, but they've still got nutritional value. Looking at maybe spent grain from breweries. This is all could work. At the moment, most of our microbial cultures are just growing on their standard lab substrates. But hopefully it would be really nice to have a kind of circular model, taking waste from one industry and using it.
There's a lot of potato wash water. It's quite a big waste stream.
Potatoes, fantastic growth stream. Yeah, totally.
Can I just take this opportunity to introduce the food and health program in the university?
For sure.
Yeah. Just in case everyone doesn't know, we do have a food and health program. So this is a one-stop. Who we are a multidisciplinary group, stretching across the medical school and the nutritional science, food science, engineering, business, logistics. So we are one-stop shop in the university for anyone who wants to do a simulation work. So, the university is a large space. And from Connie's experience, she doesn't know that there's a wine science in the university after she left. So we want to avoid that. So if anyone wants to come to work with us, we are one-stop shops. So not just me here, but still members of the group. So just feel free to let us know.
Cool. Max, any KPMG R&D tax credits you could spend?
No, I was going to ask is like, have you looked, especially for Daisy Lab, have you looked into the different government fundings there is available, and like are you accessing them?
He's the man to talk to if you are.
Not trying to sound like not trying to sell you up to it, but like there's such a wide range of different funding available.
Yeah, totally. So we have received one government fund very recently and are applying for a few more at the moment, a couple more at the moment. So definitely. We've also got like private investors as well. Yeah, but definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna chat.
Yeah, Kiara does a bit more of that than I do, so.
Have you done a talk about Rocket Lab at uni yet? Not yet.
Go on.
Next time. Cool. Right, if there are no more questions, feel free to hang around. If you need to leave tonight, carry on. But it's nice seeing you all, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.